If your workspace looks like Trello for tasks, Google Docs for files, Google Forms for guest intakes, and Zapier stitching it all together, this episode is for you.
Today, we're diving into one of the biggest traps we see in podcast production, relying on a patchwork of tools that were never meant to work together. Let's break it all down in this episode.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of Behind the Workflow. My name is Tally,
And I'm Simona.
and today we're going to be talking about why you should stop duct taping Trello, Google Forms, and Zapier altogether.
And why you can do it so much better. So, we're going to start off with the problem with patchwork systems. Now, every new agency, especially in the beginning, you kind of duct tape your systems together. You figure out what's going to work and you kind of pull in different pieces and you just make it work, right? And it's always good enough, if that makes any sense. When I started my agency, Volt Productions, that's a lot of what we did. We would take all the different tools that we had available and we created our own system from it. And while it's really good in the beginning and they may work at first, systems like this are very fragile because if you have one broken zap or if you have one automation that fails, now all of a sudden you're missing things. Your client can't review the file because it didn't go to them. The guest never gets scheduled in. Your team doesn't know that something has been recorded or content isn't done on time and the client doesn't have enough time to review it. If you are an agency owner, you're going to understand all of these pain points right off the bat. And so the problem with these patchwork systems is that when things are not talking to each other, that's when things can break down. And never mind figuring out how to train somebody else. You're the only one who understands the process. So it makes it really difficult to take that process and share it with someone else on your team for them to take and for them to implement.
There's a 2024 survey by Podcast Movement that showed that 70% of podcasters they actually feel limited by their current tools and a whooping 60% said their workflows are currently inefficient. That's a big number, Simona.
That's a huge number. And also, a lot of the people that we've talked to, especially agency owners within our Northflow community in and of itself, have told us, and we've seen some of their processes and how people are patching their own systems together. And so that's the challenge and like the danger of building a workflow from all of these tools that you happen to just start with. You never really figure out what actually is going to work for you. And it becomes challenging once you're so deeply into it to shift and to think about changing your process to becoming anything else. So, what happens with that though is that you don't ever really adopt the process that you need because it just becomes the way that it's always been done, right? And when it's always been done a certain way, it's easier to just do that week in and week out. But actually, in the long run, I think it can be a little bit more challenging, which brings us to clarity over chaos.
Yes, so if you need four tabs open on different browsers to publish just one episode, it's time to simplify. Like, there's better ways to do that nowadays.
So you want to start by asking yourself, what does your process actually require? Not what you pieced together, but what does your system and what does your process actually need? And I'll give you an example. When we first started using Northflow for Behind the Workflow, which is this show that you're listening to right now, we were creating our processes and our systems. And I was doing things in a way that I had done them in the past within my agency. And Tally, if you remember, you were like, "Why are you doing it that way? Like, you know what I mean? This is a way more efficient way." And in my mind, I was like, "Oh my gosh, like it's just how I'm used to doing it." But then once I got over and kind of got through, "Oh, this is how I've always been doing it." It made it so much easier to implement a new system that's way more efficient and has everything that I need right there.
Yes, and one thing too, streamlining isn't just about saving like on clicks, right? It actually reduces like decision fatigue and gives you more energy for the creative work that actually matters. Because at the end of the day, your clients and your listeners, they want to hear all that creative content that you just produced.
Exactly. And you know what, too, Tally? It helps you stay ahead of different trends. When you don't have to worry about your process or your system or, a zap failing, for example, or an automation not going off, those things take up a lot of brain space. Those things take up a lot of, additional chaos in your mind, right? So if you can take all of that out of your brain and not have to worry about the system and if it's going to continue to work for you, you save yourself so much energy, right? And we talked about energy in our last podcast episode, but energy is so important because, like you said, if we're talking about creative work, now we have time to dedicate to the things that truly matter in moving the needle on client shows forward and moving the needle in business forward. If you're constantly worrying about your workflows, you never really have time to sit and review your clients' strategy, right? Because you're constantly worried about letting this person know that this file is done, making sure your editor has everything up to date. Everyone knows the deadline and when things are due. So, anyways, that's why it's really important, in my opinion, to map out your workflow before you choose your different tools. And so, if you think about your roadmap, you really want to outline every single step of the process. When you start creating a new agency, a lot of the times what happens is you just kind of hit the ground running. And in my experience, a lot of the people that I know that work in this space, they don't really create a whole process before you begin. You just kind of start, right? So you want to first start by outlining every single step, your guest booking process, the prep for your guests, the recording process, the booking links, the editing, the publishing, the promotion, content creation, and all of that. And then you want to take a look and see at what is repetitive, what is manual, and what is collaborative. When you can figure out those three different pieces, then you have something that you can step and repeat week over week, month over month, year over year. And then, and only then, you can choose your tools that match those needs specifically. So, what I love about Northflow is that it allows you to create these steps once you've outlined and figured out what your process is. You can go and build it so you don't have to worry about what it actually is going to look like and how you bring it to life.
Yes. And I really feel like this step is so underrated. Most people, they would just grab whatever free tool they can find, or
Oh,
like
yeah.
they use something that someone recommended, and then the reverse engineering their entire workflow to fit it. Yes. So it's basically like it's working backwards, right? You're
Mhm.
not just getting a tool that fits for you. You're getting any tool out there and try to make your process fit.
Exactly. But then also too, Tally, like it can be a huge waste of money if you think about it. People spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars every single year to all kinds of different platforms. Like I know for myself, like just Trello, when I was using Trello, was literally like almost like $400 a year to use Trello
Wow.
just for that one task. Then I had to go and purchase another thing for another task. Then I had to go, you know what I mean? So it's like when you duct tape all of your stuff together, you end up spending so much more money on tools and different systems that you may not actually need. And then the worst is getting, a project management system and then it doesn't do what you want it to do, right? And then so now you've just wasted the money on it. And like this is how you end up with different tools that are like duct taped together instead of having and creating a system that supports you, supports your client, supports the show, and supports the guest, right? Because when you really start and think about your workflow and you begin there, the tools that you use are there to serve you and not the other way around.
Yes. And that's the difference between like having a chaos workflow and a full clarity workflow. Knowing your process first gives you like the power to pick your tools that actually reduces friction and not create more friction for you and your team. And also it's not like adding more and you end up hacking together a workflow that's more frustrating than helpful.
Which is one thing that was super important when we were creating Northflow, the idea of creating an integrated system, something that works holistically with your entire process so that you don't need 5, 6, 7 different apps that you pool together and make it work. You have one central platform that can replace all of these different systems, especially if it's integrating natively and it's designed for this specific use. That's a big other thing. Not everything is always designed for the way that you want to do it. So a lot of the times you have to hack it. I remember I was so frustrated with our process a couple years ago. I was like, okay, let me create, a podcast project management tool on Notion. And it was more of a headache trying to figure out how to create the like Notion to fit what I needed And it was so frustrating, and I ended up not using it at all, even though some people use it and it's efficient for them. I'm like, "Okay, let me just go back to my checklist and go back to my Google Drive because this is easier than trying to figure it out altogether." So, do you have any examples that you wanna share about that too?
Yes, so I have an example with Northflow.
Mm.
So basically, if you set up a form within Northflow, it can be, let's say, a guest intake form. Whenever you share that link, you can actually have an option to automatically create an episode for that form submission. So every time a guest fills out that form, you will get a new episode card within your Northflow dashboard. So right there, it eliminates Google Forms and also Zapier. And it ties everything together right there where you're already working. It's already your dashboard that you're going to, anyways.
Which is so important, and that's what really matters. There was a report done in 2023 by Descript, and it found that 68% of podcast producers spend more time managing tools than managing content. And so, the more integrated your system is, the more time that you're going to get back. Can you imagine all of the time that you're going to get back in your production schedule, your production workflow with your team, with what you're creating within your agency for your agency, if you didn't have to worry about the systems and the tools that you're using as part of your process and that everything was just done for you?
Yes, and it also reduces chances of a human error, right?
Mhm.
Because if your workflow is clean and centralized, there's less jumping around between different platforms and fewer moving pieces to break.
Mhm, exactly, and then that allows you to build for your future team as well.
Yes. Even if you're solo now, you have to build your system like if somebody else is going to jump in and build it tomorrow. And they will
Mhm.
be taking on for where you left off and continue to build upon that and not just like having to figure out what tasks you usually do for every single episode.
Exactly. And that was a big problem that I had within my agency as well. Is like when I started up the agency, it was just me, right? And then I brought in team members afterwards, but I never put time towards thinking about SOPs or templates or, how we even name files, for example. I never thought about automation. And there was no system that someone could just step into and, take over without me helping them and guiding them through the whole process. And it's challenging, right? Because you need to have these different pieces in place because if you don't have them in place, then it's harder for people to come in and to help you. And it's
Hmm.
honestly harder for you overall to continue to grow and scale without feeling like you're stressed out all the time or burnt out or anything like that. So,
Yes, and I love a good SOP. So
you
standard
do.
operating procedures. Yes, I am one of those. Yes.
I love
Where
it
you
though.
have like different templates, you have specific way that you name your files, just the whole automation setup and this way, like you said, like somebody can jump in if you're on vacation, somebody can jump in and know exactly what to do next.
Exactly.
So like I like to say like think like a CEO. You're not just managing your show, you're actually building a business, right?
Exactly, and every good business, like you said, has your SOPs, but it also has your automation, it also has intention behind it. So you wanna make sure that you're automating what you're creating intentionally, but not excessively. So automate those tasks that are repetitive, but don't automate things that need your brand voice or your creative judgment on them. And so a lot of the times you can automate a lot of your process, right? So that can be things like guest emails or guest booking links, booking calendars, and all of that. And there's ways to personalize things where you can still create that human touch and that connection. But make sure that whatever you're automating, that you're reviewing, right? That you're doing a little bit of quality control on what you have automated so that it continues to make sense because your guest and client experience are really important. And those are the things that will continue to follow you as an agency owner, as a podcaster, as a producer. And those are the things that are really important.
Yes, and it's totally okay to use tools like Zapier, but use it strategically. Don't use it as a band-aid. Make sure that it's just you're using it as a helper and not something that's keeping it everything together like an actual glue. So it's just making things more efficient, but not like the main thing that's holding everything together.
Exactly. And a 2023 survey from Podcast Index found that nearly 55% of podcast teams reported automation errors that impacted a live episode. And so this is something
Oh,
that's
wow.
totally right. And that's totally avoidable with having the right balance of tech and automation and workflows and systems. So I think it's really important just to make sure that whatever workflow you're setting up, that workflow is working hand in hand with the product that you're trying to create, the show you're trying to create, and the relationships that you're trying to build as well.
Yeah, so simple. Just intentional automation, they break less, and they will also save you time over time without putting your reputation or your process at risk at all.
Exactly. Exactly. So once you have all of this together and you finally stop duct taping your whole process, you want to make sure that you audit and that you optimize everything quarterly. I personally love doing this within my agency. We sit down with clients on a month to month basis and we look at everything. We take a look at the upcoming episodes that are coming up, analytics, stats, but then also what is working in the workflow, what is not. Is there something in the process that needs to change, and so on? Because this is how you can ensure if clients or guests or what have you are feeling like your automations and your workflows are actually supporting them. And then if they're not, then you can make changes. And if they are, then you've done a great job.
And if you just do it on a quarterly basis, this shouldn't take more than 30 minutes to just walk through your process from start to finish. And also, like, include your team if you have one, because they might be hitting friction points that you're not, or, they're like duplicating work. And you will actually be surprised at how many like small, annoying things that could come up or that are actually slowing things down for everyone.
Exactly. And according to a 2023 workflow trends report by Process Kit, teams that did quarterly system audits reported a 25% boost in production speed over the course of a year. That is massive.
That's a big number. Yeah.
Hmm.
25%.
I know.
Not
Time
bad.
is money though, you
All
know?
right.
Like if
Yes.
you're not optimizing and you're just wasting more time, then you're going to spend more time doing the things that don't actually matter and you like end up running around in a circle and then you get to the end of the week and you feel like you've done absolutely nothing and, maybe you just did a lot of busy work, you know?
Yeah. Well, a 25% boost could actually mean at the end of the month a 25% payment increase, right?
Exactly.
It's an easy thing to do, just spending those 30 minutes and you're just trying to make sure everything is aligned, everything is scalable so you and your team can continue to grow.
Exactly. So, as we wrap up today's episode, let's share a couple of key takeaways that we want you to take and implement and consider for your own workflow.
Yes, so fragile piece together system can break easily and waste time.
Simplifying your workflow reduces stress and boosts your creative energy.
I love how you always end up with the energy
I know.
one. Love it. And you can start by mapping your process, your full process before choosing tools.
All in one systems will reduce friction and improve collaboration. I know it definitely rings true over here.
Build systems that future teammates can step into easily.
And automating in a smart way. So, only what makes sense to automate.
Don't forget to audit so you can evolve your process every quarter and continue to grow. So, if your setup feels more like a duct tape system, this is your sign to stop everything you're doing, take a step back, and start fresh.
I love that. Map it out, simplify. And if you want a system built for podcasters by podcasters, check out Northflow. The link to request your invite is in the episode notes below.
Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time on Behind the Workflow.